Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I am Emily and I'm so glad that you're here. In today's video we are going to be painting with watercolor snowdrops. This is going to be part of a new series that I'm doing this year, which is going to be birth month flowers. So snowdrops is one of the flowers for January. So I hope you'll come back with me every month as we do a new flower. For supplies today, I am going to be using my Ruben watercolor set, and I already have ready. This is yellow green, true green, hooker's green with a little bit of emerald green because that's what was in my palette. And then this is Payne's gray with a little bit of ultramarine because that was what was in my palette. I just added Payne's gray to it. And we are actually going to be using masking fluid this time. This is one of the brands that I really like, and it's nice because it does have an applicator. But you can also buy little, they're like rubber. So, because if you use masking fluid with a brush, it's going to totally ruin it. You can put a little bit of dish soap on a brush and then use this, then use the masking fluid, and that will help to protect it. Just a little note for you. And then the brushes I think I'm going to be using most of the time, my Princeton round 16, my Princeton round 3, and my Princeton round 6. And then we're also going to be using some salt. So I have kosher salt, and then I just have regular table salt. Both salts do something a little bit different, so I think I might do a little bit of both. See how I feel. A couple tips that I usually want to tell you. When I'm prepping my paints, putting water in my little pans, I use a pipette, so I'm not dirtying up a brush and then wasting that paint. And then I use kind of a, just not an expensive brush to then stir up my paints and then bring them over to my palette, because I have ruined the tip of brushes before. So just another little tip for you. So I'm gonna kind of show you how I drew this kind of quickly, just kind of break it down. And then I'm actually gonna be working in my little watercolor pad. It's the same pad I did for Paint My Plants, which I might bring back this year. And then I also did put a little border of washi tape, just, you know, make it look kind of pretty, which that's what this is. Let's just jump right in. So you can see that they're kind of triangular. So you could actually go in, let me zoom in. Obviously I didn't make mine exactly like the photo. So you can actually just go in. I kind of placed the actual flowers first, just kind of so I knew where I wanted them to be. So you can kind of just put in triangles wherever you would want them to be. And then you can have some where you can see the inside, and then some where it's kind of like the behind part. You could have them all be the behind part so you don't actually see the inside. That's entirely up to you. And the stem actually goes up, and then there's this little bitty shoot that sticks out, and that's what the flower is coming from. So I put my stem in, and this isn't, you know, supposed to be, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, not necessarily realistic. So I put that in, and then I just did kind of a little rounded offshoot, and then there's like a little hangy thing, and then this little whatever that is. And then you can go ahead and fill in your petals, and this one's going to be open, so you'll sometimes see the inside a little bit, and there the ends of the petals are a little bit rounded for the most part. And then since you can see inside this one, there's another little kind of shoot that comes down, and then a circle, and then it has these little doodads. And then I just kind of repeated that. This was on Pics, I believe, is the website that that's from. So you can just kind of find a picture and you can do all all of the flowers that are hanging off of it or arranged in the picture, or you can just pick some out, or it's obviously entirely up to you. I almost did all of them closed just to simplify it, but I just kind of wanted you to see what some of them look like opened. And again, this is a loose rendition. And then you can just kind of quickly add some of the leaves, and they're kind of rounded also, kind of different lengths, and then just kind of shooting out at a little bit of different directions, like so. All right, let me reset really quick and I will be right back. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is put the masking fluid on. And I'm gonna put it definitely where the white flowers are. And then I'll probably, you know, put a little bit here where the stems and the leaves are as well. Because we're gonna do a wet on wet technique in the back with the Payne's gray. I'm putting a darker color behind so that the white flowers will kind of stick out. And then we'll do green, obviously, for the leaves. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this. And I've got this to kind of spread it around if I need to. It doesn't need to be thick. And I kind of go outside my lines, that way I can potentially erase those a little bit. So you would just fill in the whole flower and everything. And they do make like jars of this that you can also get if you don't want the little applicator bottle. Probably get a little bit more bang for your buck, but this is what I had. My other ones, you have to use them fairly quickly because they get all kind of gummy on the inside. Show you what I mean. It can get kind of gummy in there. I usually have like a straight pen standing by in case it gets kind of clogged. Okay, so I'm having trouble using the applicator right now because I haven't actually used this in a while and I can see it's kind of getting gummy inside. Like I said, you kind of have to use them pretty quick. So I'm gonna just kind of dip it in and do it that way instead. And you have to work fast because it'll just kind of get stuck on your applicator that you're using. So I'll have to wipe it off every once in a while because it'll start to get gummy. It's kind of like a rubber cement type of stuff, if you will. They also make like clear crayons you could use, but you can't if you just wanted the area to stay white because you can't put paint back over it, but it gives the paint will repel from where the crayon is. All right, I'm gonna do the rest of this off camera and I'll be right back. Well, that was absolutely dreadful. This will be getting thrown away. It should not be like chunky, but it'll be fine. Usually it's kind of a smooth layer. So, and you need to let it dry naturally. You don't want to use heat on it because then it can get kind of gummy. So I'm going to let this dry and I will be back. All right, that's dry, I believe. Good enough, I think. Okay, so we're going to be using the wet on wet technique. So we're going to get our page wet and then we're going to bring in our paint, and then while it's still wet, we're going to go ahead and sprinkle in some salt, which I will get ready. Got to be kind of quick with it. Okay, so I've got water off to the side here. I have this book attached to another book underneath to make it flat and then to also keep it from kind of buckling. I'm just going to go down and put a nice amount of water down. You don't want it puddling, but you want to see a nice sheen on the page. And I'm just going right over that masking fluid because it just is acting as a barrier. And that way I can get any little nicks and crannies, or nooks and crannies, I guess. Whatever. There we go. You really want to use 100% cotton paper when you are doing wet on wet. All right, so I have a fairly thick consistency, or creamy consistency, I should say, of my Payne's Gray with that little bit of blue in there. And I'm just gonna kind of put that on, and I want that to be a little bit creamier. So I'm actually gonna go straight from the palette, see how much darker that is. And you can have, you know, different strengths, obviously, of the paint. So you can have some areas that are a little darker, and then some that are a little lighter to add a little bit of interest. You can leave a little bit of kind of white areas as well. I'm gonna go in a little bit more with some of the dark, kind of trying to get all the way to the edges there. And then while that's wet, I'm gonna go ahead, got some of that kosher salt, and I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle that on a little bit. And then I'm gonna take just a little bit of the table salt and sprinkle that on as well. And what the salt is going to do is kind of soak up some of that paint, and then we'll get a nice little it'll kind of granulated, or it gives it a nice little texture. It's actually really cool. And you need to let this air dry as well. You don't really want to hit it with the heat, so I will let this dry and then I'll be right back. All right, it's all dry, so you can really see how it gives that really cool texture. So you can kind of scrape it off with your nail, your finger. You can also get a cloth and kind of just gently rub it off as well if you don't want to get your finger, because it'll get a little bit dirty. Be careful around the masking fluid. We are going to rub some of that off, and it's okay if a little bit of it stays on. You can get the, you know, get the rest of it if we need to after we paint the flower. So now I'm going to rub off the masking fluid just from the stem and the leaves. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on the flowers for now. You just kind of rub it with your finger. If that doesn't work, you can also use an eraser. All right, so I took it off of the leaves, the stems, and the little hangy things, whatever they are, but I left it on the flower petals and the little offshoot, because those are all white. All right, so I'm gonna take a smaller brush. I'm gonna start with my 3 to do the stems and the little hangy doodle thing. And these are fairly creamy as well. This will not be wet on wet. This is wet on dry. All right, so I'm just gonna start with my stems, just filling in that negative space. And then I'm just gonna bring in a little bit of darker and just kind of touch it a few places. And for these little guys, I'm gonna make a little bit darker. So I'll start with the true green, I think is what it is. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of this mixture of hooker's green and emerald green. And I'm just kind of touching the tip of my brush and letting those kind of diffuse together as well. I always kind of give my paint a stir every time I dip my brush in. Make sure that it's nice and creamy. And then since the leaves are a little bigger, I'm going to switch to my number 6. And this time those are fairly dark, I think, compared to the rest of it. So I'm going to kind of do what I did with the little hangy doodles. And again, I'm going to drop in a little bit of that darker color. You can definitely put some dark in after it dries to differentiate between the leaves. You can also make it kind of a more illustrative and go in with a little bit of line work. If you've been here before, you know I like to do that. You can also kind of put a shadow on one side if you want to have the light coming from a specific area. I just wiped my brush off, rinsed it and wiped it off to get some of that water off, just to kind of blend that out a little bit. So I'm going to kind of let that dry for a minute so that I can go back in and put some shadows that will stick out a little bit more. And now I am going to, actually I'm going to go ahead and dry it, and then I'll take off the masking fluid from the petals. So I'll be right back. All right, so I went ahead and rubbed off the masking fluid. And they are white, but I'm actually going to go in with a very, very watered down Payne's Gray to put in a few little shadows. So that's pretty heavy. So I'm rinsing my brush, dabbing off some of the extra water, and then I'm just going right along that and softening up the edge. You just want a very little bit, and you can also even dab a little bit with your paper towel. There will definitely be a shadow by the little hangy thing. I should have looked that up, see what it was called. Rinsing my brush, and just kind of spreading that out a little bit. We will be putting some green in here for the little, for the little ball and the little seeds or whatever. Rinse your brush if you need to, and just soften the lines a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing for those little guys. And now I'm going to go ahead and go back in and put a few of those little shadows just to differentiate some of those leaves from what's behind. And again, you can put the paint down, and then if you don't like the harsh line, you can rinse your brush and then just kind of go along the edge of the paint you put down. You always just want to rinse it, dab off the water, extra water. You don't want it super wet, and then you can just blend that out. And I'm going to go back in with my small brush in the true green. And just kind of flick my brush a little bit in those stems just to add a little bit of texture. Silly me, I forgot to do the little insides on the ones that you can see behind. So the little bitty, like little sprouts are lighter than the other pieces. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of the darker color and just create a little bit of a circle in the two that I have where you can kind of see inside of it a little bit. And then I'm going to go in with that lighter green that I have, the yellow green, but just kind of lightly put in a couple of little offshoots there, and then go back in with that little bit darker color, and then just kind of add a couple little dots to the end of those. And now I'm going to do a little bit of line work. So I'm going to dry those really quick, and then I'll be right back. All right, I've talked before about different line weights. So for the little flower petals, I'm going to use a 0.05, and these are my Molotow liners, and then a 0.5 for the leaves, for sure, just to have, like I said, different line weights. And I'm going to do them very loose, just kind of sketchy, not necessarily showing every line. And again, you never ever have to outline anything if you don't want to. I'm only going to outline one side of the stems. Still being loose, kind of sketchy. The only time I want to be sketchy. And then for the bigger leaves, going in with a little bit of a fatter one. And then for the last thing that I'm going to do, because I have an obsession, is a little bit of white splatter, because they are snowdrops, so we could pretend like it is snowing a little bit. Like this is ice, so I just think it would be kind of neat. So I'm gonna actually use a little bit of my bleed proof white. Okay, it's hard to see, but it's fairly watered down in there. And then I'm just gonna hold my brush kind of from the end and just do a couple little taps, nothing crazy. Kind of bring this up so you can see a little bit better. Yeah, just a fun little January painting. So I will be back, hopefully should be Wednesday. I was very sick the last several days, which is why I was not able to get a video out on Wednesday this week. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. So when I finished filming, I decided to actually go back in to the flowers and add a little bit of white Posca pen. I'm gonna try to show you here. I just wanted to have them be a little bit wider, and then I basically just kind of went in and like flicked the marker a little bit so that you could still see some of those shadow lines that I had put in. And then I put just a little bit in for little highlights in the leaves, and then a little bit on the stems. So I just wanted to pop in and tell you that I did that too. All right, thanks again for being here, and I will see you on Wednesday. Bye.